Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great. Good. When you roll into your local rifle scope store with a big bag that has a $sign on it, it's not too hard to walk out with a damn fine scope. For those of us on more modest means, we have to juggle 3 balls labeled price, quality, and features. At low to moderate price points, if we want increased quality, we typically have to forego features. And if we want features, we have to eat a loss in quality. Today, we're going to look at a budget optic, the Athlon Neos 4-12 scope, which is currently sitting on my CZ452, that despite its relatively modest price has actually garnered a lot of favorable reviews in recent years for offering good quality, but also some modest features. Now, let's get something out of the way immediately. This is a scope that comes in at about US 200 or Canadian 250. Prices range quite a bit depending on which scope from the Neos line you're buying, and it's made in China. Now, usually that would steer most people towards another choice, but I jumped in with both feet because, as I said, the word on the street has been pretty positive on the Neos line from Athlon, and I happen to have needed a new scope for a rimfire rifle for 25 to 100 yard shooting. First, let's see what you get inside the box. All right, the most exciting part of any video, opening up a box. This is the box that you're going to get when you buy the scope. It's got your basic information on it, which scope you're buying, second focal plane, some of the features that are included. Inside the box, well, obviously there would be a scope normally, but mine is currently sitting on my CZ457 Varmint MTR, so you won't see it inside the box at the moment. You also receive your standard manual and one of these chintzy lens cleaning cloths that I don't think a single person has ever enjoyed using. That's it. Budget optic usually means nothing in the way of extras. Now let's shift to the scope itself. The Neos line are second focal plane scopes, which is to say that as you raise and lower magnification, the reticle does not change in size. Now, whether that's an issue for you depends on your personal preference and what you intend on using the scope for. Some people prefer first focal plane scopes for some use cases, such as precision shooting, and second focal plane for others. I use this at the range at a maximum of 100 yards, so to be honest, it doesn't really make much of a difference to me. The Neos line does come in 3 different magnifications, 3 to 9 by 40, 4 to 12 by 40, and 6 to 18 by 44. The one that I'm looking at today is the 4 to 12 by 40 model. And they do offer a choice of reticles which include those appropriate for hunting rifles called Center X and one for rimfire that they've dubbed BDC 22 rimfire. As the name of that reticle suggests, it does come with a bullet drop compensator for 22 ammunition. The utility of that is in doubt given that it's difficult to even get consistency between different lots of ammunition from the same manufacturer as opposed to completely different manufacturers' ammunition. So, unless you take the time to learn what the BDC does for your specific ammunition, I'm not sure the utility of it. On the 4 to 12 by 40 model, you have a, not surprisingly, 40mm objective lens. The tube is 1 inch in diameter. The scope comes in at 12.4 inches long and weighs 18.1 ounce. Eye relief is between 3.11 inches to 3.15 inches, depending on magnification. A quick physical tour of the controls. On the top and right side, you have your turrets to adjust elevation and windage in quarter MOA increments. And both of those come with a screw-on cap to protect the turret. On the left side is your parallax adjustment, which starts at 10 yards and stretches out to the infinite setting, for whatever that's worth. On the ocular lens, you have your standard fast focus adjustment, and ahead of it is your magnification adjustment, which on this particular scope, as I said, starts at 4x and goes up to 12x. That's it. So, how does it perform? In terms of ergonomics, there isn't much to report about the scope itself. The controls are where they're supposed to be and they work as intended. The turrets, which are accessible after removing that standard protective cap, click positively. The magnification ring offers just enough resistance, and the fast focus, does its job. The only thing that I didn't like was the parallax adjustment knob seemed to get a little stiffer as you hit 25 yards and going down. Nothing major, just something that I happened to notice on my scope. Now, in terms of eye box, I didn't have too much trouble getting the proper sight picture repeatedly, but I also shoot a precision rifle with a cheek rest, so that's not surprising. That said, even when I use it on my Ruger 10/22, I didn't have much in the way of issues. Eye relief is nothing astounding, but I found that 3 or so inches was the usual, and that's fine by me. I didn't feel like I was glued to the scope, so for me, the eye relief was just fine. Now, as for the image quality, here's where the price tag is felt. It's by no means horrible, it's actually pretty good considering, but you won't mistake the image quality with one of your higher end scopes. I found that in bright conditions, the quality was fine, not outstanding, but as it got less bright out, I did notice that the scope was having some difficulty capturing enough light to keep up. Not enough that the scope was rendered ineffective by any means, but I think you will notice it. One thing I was a little surprised by was the lack of distortion in the image. From 4x all the way up to 12x, there was little to no distortion, even at the edges of the image. I think you're seeing that in the footage now. I apologize for its quality, but it's hard to capture video through a scope lens. Now, for field of view, you're getting 8.9 feet at 100 yards at maximum magnification. Not stupendous, but not a narrow tunnel either. Again, this is a budget optic. It's a review, and reviews demand the easily digestible pros and cons. As per my usual practice, we'll start with cons first. Some people will argue that its Chinese manufacture is a con. I only listed here because someone would mention it if I didn't. Is it a con? You know, I don't know. The Chinese are certainly capable of making high quality gear. It's their quality control on the lower end which can be spotty or non-existent. At any rate, I didn't notice any issues which screamed Chinese manufacture, but if country of origin of optics is important for you, then it could be a con. The quality of glass is about what you'd expect for a budget optic. It's not the brightest glass I've ever seen, but it's also, you know, about what I would expect for a US $200-ish scope. It works just fine in mid to bright conditions, but you may be a little annoyed by low light performance. I should note that I didn't see any real distortion in the image. Now, some might consider this niggling, but it's the little small annoyances that eat at me. But it is annoying that you can't zero the elevation turrets simply by lifting them up and turning them to the appropriate mark. Rather, you have to unscrew a screw and then turn them to zero that way. It's not something that would probably annoy most people, I suppose, but it annoyed me. The parallax adjustment knob is a bit stiff to turn. Not the biggest crime, but it is noticeable how nice the elevation and windage adjustment turrets are compared to the stiffness of the parallax adjustment. Outside of that, I can't really think of much in the way of cons. Now, on to what I like about the scope. It is a budget optic, so not surprisingly, budget or price is going to be a strong point in its favor. My particular model scope comes in, as I said, about US 200 or about Canadian 250, and for that money, you get a pretty decent package. The quality is pretty good for the price. No, you aren't getting Leupold or Swarovski quality glass, but you also aren't paying 10 times the price. Construction is good, the scope is solid, and there were no flaws or problems out of the box. For US 200-ish, you get a scope that punches a little above its weight in quality. I like the fact that the Neos line has parallax adjustment across all models. I will grant that during hunting, you're probably just going to set it at, let's say, 100 yards or 50 yards, whatever it is that you're hunting for. But at the range, I think it's pretty useful. Some models also come with an illuminated reticle, though mine doesn't. So if that's important to you, make sure to carefully pick the model that you want. Now, with all that said and done, what do I actually think of this scope, and would I recommend it? For a budget optic, I don't have too much to complain about. As I said earlier, I think this scope does punch a little above its weight in terms of quality and features. As with all budget optics, it's a balance of compromises with each component and feature. More features you add, the more you have to scrimp on other aspects. With this particular scope, you're getting reach-out capability for a rimfire with 12 times magnification, decent turrets in terms of click feedback, parallax adjustment, and good construction. At its price point, it's not going to be a leader in any category, but I think it does well enough in each of them to merit some points. But it does do well enough in the categories of quality of construction, quality of image, and features that I do like about this scope. Is it the first scope that I would reach for if I had a healthy budget? No. Is it a scope that I would strongly consider if I was determined not to spend a lot of money, wanted something for some rimfire bench shooting, and understood that there would be some compromises due to the price? Yeah. In my time shooting with this scope on both my Ruger 1022 and CZ457, it didn't give me any issues. Shooting out to 100 yards with a rimfire rifle in this scope isn't a problem, though I think if you're interested in true precision rimfire shooting, you're going to want to opt for a scope with a higher upper end magnification. I found the eye box and eye relief to be adequate at both lower and higher magnification, and target acquisition wasn't a challenge. All in all, while this isn't the scope that I would buy had I had that big bag of money I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if I was trying to hold the line on costs and didn't want to sacrifice on quality too much, I'd probably opt for this scope. Would I buy this scope again, knowing what I know about it now? After having used it on 2 different rifles? Yeah. I suppose that means I actually do recommend the Athlon Neos 4-12x40 scope. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed this review of the Neos scope and found it vaguely informative. As always, I hope all of your shots, regardless of optic choice, ring true. Take care, and bye-bye.